Hello, everyone. Thanks, Dr. Parag, for joining us on a podcast at Dawdle. Thanks for taking out time to share your experiences and insights with our global audience. And in today's episode, we are going to explore a theme which sits right at the intersection of technology, governance, and global relevance. That is how India's higher education ecosystem is transforming for the future. And we have got Dr. Parag Diwan with us. He's the founder of India's first energy domain university. He has pioneered ERP and virtual learning systems long before they were even fashionable. He has advised policy bodies, mentored a lot of edtech startups, and shaped countless academic institutions over his experience of 3 decades. Dr. Diwan, it's an absolute pleasure for us to host you on DawdleLive.
Thank you, Rishikesh. I'm delighted to be here. The evolution of higher education in India has been one of the most fascinating journeys of our times. And I'm happy that we are participating in it, discussing it, not just as observer, but actual participants, and looking forward to what comes next in the coming years.
Absolutely, sir. Sir, before we, kind of go to the topics that we have for discussion, would you like to take a few minutes and kind of take us to your journey so far to give a good context to our audience?
Thanks, Rishikesh. But journey has been quite long and quite checkered, and what they say, seen it all, done it all kind of journey. So basically, I belong to Chandigarh and I grew up at campus of Punjab University. Both my parents were professors there. So I often jokingly tell my faculty and colleagues that, I'm DNA programmed for higher education. That's what it is about. And at a very young age, when you observe what goes around in universities, what is the student teacher dynamics and things like that, that makes you, absolutely. So I did my initial degrees in chemical engineering at Punjab University itself. Then I moved to South Carolina, Clemson, did a advanced degree. And in those days, I'm talking about early 80s when computers were just evolving. So with chemical engineering minor, I took a minor in computer engineering. And also my research was fascinating in the area of carbon fiber composites, which took me to a small stint with NASA, where we built carbon fiber composites, which were actually used in the stealth bombers in 1992, first Gulf War. So that's how ancient I am. But yeah. So after done that, and then I chose to come back to India. And then since I'd worked briefly in NASA, I wanted to be in something as high tech as that could be. Unfortunately, in Chandigarh, there was our first now, everybody's talking about semiconductors in the last 1.5 years. Very few people know that way back in early 80s, there was a full-fledged wafer fab semiconductor plant that India had even before TSMC was made in Taiwan. So that is, so I got an opportunity to work there. I looked after the program management of ASICs, application specific integrated circuits, which were used for all strategic needs, whether the Max exchange by CDAC or Param supercomputers by CDAC and X exchange by CDOT, and many space applications and other for which, there were times when we had sanctions and we could not import critical chips. So it was a great time of my life. But unfortunately, in 1990, we had a flame out. The entire facility got wiped out in a major fire incident. We tried to rebuild, but I think at that time it lost relevance for the country. And during which time I also acquired an MBA and a PhD in management. And PhD in management was live on deploying CIM in semiconductor industry. So which was a live project, actually built something around. And then since, as I told you earlier, I was already always programmed for higher education. I took a leap and joined IMI, International Management Institute, as an associate professor of manufacturing systems. So that was brief, a stint, because I always wanted to not be a pure play teacher, but also kind of a corporate, kind of a edupreneur, not like just my parents who was only teaching and living a life of a good teacher. So in early 1992, All India Management Association was down in dumps and they didn't have even salaries to offer. And then I took a bet. At 30, I became the director of All India Management Association. And then there was a great transformative journey. We devised many things, built into first ever distributed online distance delivery mechanism using satellite technology. So there was that time INSAT 4C, which had additional capacity. So we took that capacity, we set up receiving ends in 50 different cities of this country, grew to 3,000 students. The revenues also grew and also created the iconic MAT test, which is still used for MBA admissions. So those were heydays. What they say, I was young and foolish. So did many interesting things till to the turn of century. There was the first .com boom. And then I thought, let me try my hand and that with some investors, we tried to build first ever HR platform for self-service, which means comp and ben analysis, performance monitoring measurement. But it didn't take off. And then a friend of mine was always talking to me, let's do something, make something, Petroleum Institute. He had some idea. It worked briefly in Shell and all, but then we said, okay, let's try take this plunge. So we built a DPR in 2000, 2001, and then pitched it to various states. Fortunately for us, at time ND Tiwari was the chief minister at Uttarakhand, and he had been petroleum minister in Indira Gandhi's cabinet, and he was into his final innings, so he wanted something lasting to come in Dehradun, Uttarakhand. So he latched on our idea. We sold the idea. We got enactment done in 2003, and after that, there was no looking back. We just built, and grew it to of 15,000 automated, the IT-oriented university with a very great placement outcomes of 95% plus all these years. And then an international group, American group, became interested in us. They acquired equity with us. We exited in 2015. And since then, I'm running Paradigm Consulting, which is a boutique higher education consulting firm. And to date, we have served more than institutions, about a dozen edtechs, and the list keeps on growing. So that's where we are.
That's a prolific journey, sir. But I must say that you were meant for hire.
Told you, I was always genetically programmed. All right.
And was all of it planned, or it was like, you kind of got into it, like your friend came and he had it.
Sometimes it is planned, sometimes it is destined. Just that alchemist says, no, when universe conspires to make it happen, it happens. So that's how it happened. So not everything is planned in a blueprint in life, but yes, you take the fork. Sometimes you take the right fork, sometimes you don't.
Dr. Prag, you have been at the forefront of India's higher education, over these 3 decades, right from establishing domain-specific universities to mentoring emerging edtech ventures. When you look back, what has been the most transformative shifts in how higher education is conceived and delivered in India?
Interestingly, so if we rewind about 3 decades ago when we were, I mean, I were a student in higher education. It was all about content driven. The universities were content driven. Professors were the ultimate authorities. Classroom was the only learning space. Evolution mean end of term examinations. So, but the transformation actually began somewhere in mid 90s or thereafter. We asked question, what does learner need to thrive in this rapidly changing, because we had gone through the liberalization of 91, 92. So then there has been evolutionary phases in education. The earlier in my days there was teacher-centric. Teacher will come, deliver, we will write notes and then just vomit it out in a term and exam. Then
Yes.
slowly it transformed to learner-centric, where learners would have modicum of play, they would participate, things like flipped classroom, this, that came. And now there is the third wave of transformation, which is called learning centric. So learning is at the core. How you imbibe learning is important. It happens in many ways through collaborative projects, through peer interactions, through simulations, to real world experiences. And that's where technology plays a great role. And technology has made knowledge accessible, but still it is the pedagogy that makes it engaging. Over the years, governance has also turned. In my days, universities were very opaque bureaucracy. For a little thing, you will be in registrar's office, the deputy registrar, they will make you run around, but nothing happened. Now, good progressive universities have data-driven dashboards which tracks performances, research outputs, employability outcomes. The conversation, therefore, has moved from just plain compliance to continuous improvement and things of that sort. And I think these are all positive ways where in last 3 decades things have evolved and emerged.
So you are still bullish about the edtech revolution inside India, sir, seeing quite a few.
EdTech, yes, EdTech will remain. How EdTech and brick and mortar will intertwine, what new models will emerge. Daily we see
Hmm.
some new models. There are all hues of EdTechs. People offer online to be embedded as credits. People like Coursera, people like Upgrad, etc., who do twinning of degrees with international universities like Sunstone or University who take over a part of the education delivery model, deliver it well, and develop competencies around that. So these will happen. The text won't go away. But what would be ultimate confluence? I personally feel at some point in time it will all morph into what is called a digitally immersive learning environment with advent of metaverse and huge use of AR, VR. The online learning, what we see today is very, very rudimentary. I see in next 5, 10 years, I see change in online education in terms of digitally immersive classrooms where your avatars will be interacting with the avatars of others, and the teacher would also have his avatar form and into the class, and all that would simulate, because why online misses out is the peer interaction, the real interaction, the learning from each other, and life socialization, building lifelong friendships, etc., etc. So maybe some of this confluence would work.
Sir, when you founded this India's first energy domain university, you introduced SAP, ERP, and virtual learning models long before digital campuses were actually mainstream. What key lessons did that experience teach you about technology as both a governance and pedagogical enabler within large academic ecosystems?
No, I think that was the year 2006, 7, and it was a bold experiment. And most other universities at that time were still using manual registers. And we had to build digital literacy from scratch, convincing faculty, training staff, and most importantly, explaining why transparency and time data is important. But the first big lesson was technology succeeds only when trust precedes it. So we had to build a lot of trust building, and ERP is not so much about software as much as about culture, changing mindsets. And what it does is that decision making moves from I think to I know by real time data, evidence based decisions. And then other was, since we were also the pioneers of online or virtual classrooms
Yes.
through our Center for Continuing Education, I still remember a very interesting video which we used to use where a merchant navy captain on high seas was on his cabin and he was imbibing and he was writing, and we were the first to
Mm.
start what is called remote proctored examination. So those were, very, very pioneering days and interesting. But yes, it does take a lot while. And we were fortunate because we had no legacy system. We were a brand new university. The startup team was very, very, gung ho about doing this and be open to experimentation. But at the end, technology becomes the invisible infrastructure, which does not necessarily replaces human, but magnifies their potential. So that's what I would like to say.
Sir, when you talk to a lot of edtech startups, the edtech or maybe, the startups who are selling to educational institutions, they say that the sales cycles are pretty high and it's very difficult to sell to colleges. There's a lot of opinions out there. But what do you think is the premise of it? Like, are they missing out on something? Are they missing out on the motivations?
No, I think there are two parts of it. One is public universities. So public universities, you all know, have their own tendering systems and tender vigilance officers. And most private universities, I mean, sorry to say, are not fully professional.
Hmm.
They don't leave decision making in hands of vice chancellors and other things. So it's still the chancellor, owner, promoter, which calls the shots. And sometimes he does not come from a background that, kind of syncs with what edtechs are trying to what. So he just says that if I put in 5 crores,
Hmm.
would be my outcome? Would I get 1,000 more students or 2,000? So that's not the way to go about it. That's why sales cycles become prolonged unless there are empowerment at the operative leadership level, or the promoter itself is a very savvy tech visionary who has seen the world.
Hmm.
So then the cycles are not so long, but yeah, typically cycles are long.
Sir, you have also built partnerships with universities across North America, Europe, and Asia. How do you see these cross border academic alliances and credit mobility frameworks evolving over the next decade, especially with the rise of digital credentials and blockchain based verification systems?
Yeah, I think the next decade will define the idea of boundaryless universities. We're heading towards network universities where learners can possibly assemble degrees by taking 60% credits from their home institution, 40% through various MOOC enablers or directly from other international institutions. And all that binds together for veracity through credentialing through blockchain mechanism, which makes it verifiable. And today, skills are more informed than just the credits on your transcript. So these are also, and what's also happening, earlier we used to have this MOUs for the sake of it to fill check says a NAC accreditation or something.
Yes, yes.
Now these are becoming truly viable global classrooms, faculty co-mentoring, AI-based translation to remove language barriers. So education is becoming what I say an open architecture where
Yes.
blockchain and the SB protocol ensuring credibility and mobility. So that's what I would say.
You've rightly touched upon one point, sir. This thing also comes that, a lot of the colleges are just doing these partnership for the sake of NAC accreditation and also for making some extra revenue from foreign exchanges. These kind of things come up. Your views on that, sir? Like,
No, I mean, NAC also has to change, and now they ask for what is the functionality of this MOU, the MOU having bundle of MOUs doesn't mean anything. So what is the functionality? How many student exchange? How many teacher exchange? What are the joint research projects? So that's what it is, but it all evolves, in any era. There are evolutionary phases. It always starts from something, and if the intent is not mollified, then it moves on to bigger and better things.
and having implemented all these ERP systems and digital learning environments early on, sir, like what do you consider the critical success factors for large scale digital transformation inside universities?
So in most universities, digital transformation is seen as a procurement process. Buy this, buy that, buy hardware, buy software, and digital transformation happens. But actually, it is an organizational mindset shift. And I see three core pillars around that. One is clarity of purpose. Why are we doing this? How it's going to impinge upon student? How his experience is going to improve? How governance will get streamlined? Would be better learning outcomes. Without a purpose, digital adoption is just cosmetic. Then there is a culture of empowerment. Faculty and students must feel empowerment that they are co-creating, they are the owner of the system, they are co-designers. Then the multiplier effect takes place. And finally is the change management. Unless there is continuous training, feedback, small wins, celebration of those. So in a sense, technology enhances academic autonomy. It frees the faculty from drudgery of routine, mundane tasks so that they can focus on creativity, research, innovation, all the things that we talk about. So that's my take on that.
So there is still seems to be a big gap between the industry expectations and a lot of colleges, how they train their students. What are your views on that, sir? How can colleges or universities bridge that gap?
I think this is a perennial debate, and there's both sides of it. So on one side, industry keeps on saying this, but what what do they actually do about this? Would they send on second man some of their employees and say go teach a semester? They won't do that. Would they take good students and really give them meaningful internships, or internships is just about bringing tea, coffee, link papers in a file? That's what most internships in industry are about. Unless these both sides make their own advances, and again, it depends on company to company. I'm not saying all companies are like that. I'm not saying all universities are like that. But there has to be will. There has to be long. Uh, Nurtured. We used to have something called based on what is an international most favored nations MFN treaties. So we used to have MFIs, most favored industry treaties, long term, which will have multiple components. Even our teachers will go and intern with that. We still run that project called Abhigyat. A lot of teachers have never been to industry themselves. And
Yes.
what would they teach in engineering or business education if they've not been to industry? They've never set a foot in industry.
Yes.
And then how about academics coming and doing a sabbatical, maybe fulfilling their PhD coursework requirements while teaching few courses. So interesting models can be built, endowments can be, we built the entire replica of a oil field on the campus by taking the waste materials from ONGCs and oil Indias, and so created a rig out of junk, which was actually functional. So that was engineering project. The students did themselves to make it functional. So where there is a will, there is a way. Where there's otherwise, it all translates to just a lip service from both sides. So
Absolutely. There are a lot of edtech startups who are trying to bridge this gap also.
I've been there, but I don't think anybody really
Ah,
ever succeeded.
yes. Sir, coming from a semiconductor and computer integrated manufacturing background, you understand systems thinking very deeply. So, how do you see all these IoT, and data analytics being applied today in higher education management? From the yield optimization in admissions to predictive analytics for student success and employability.
I feel that university is like a microcosm or a micro city, complex, dynamic, and full of data signals. So a lot of data signals are going on in the university. So having said that, AI can personalize learning journeys, recommending remedial modules for weak learners, identifying disengaged students earlier, mapping career pathways. IoT has a great thing, and some people, in fact, at UPS we had a microgrid run based on IoT, which would automatically use different sources of energy from some solar energy on our rooftop to grid to small windmills that we had to battery storage. And also with the visualization, motion sensors, cameras, safety, security of students, faculty, anti-ragging measures. IoT is a great tool in that. Bus management, all that. So it depends on how you use these test cases to actually deliver value to you. At the end, analytics is all about connecting dots from admission yield to alumni to employability, because we can now predict with reasonable accuracy which students will struggle in their first year, proactively support them. Placement data can feed back into curriculum redesign. In a sense, we are giving universities a nervous system that senses, responds, and continuously learns. So that's how AI and IoT and analytics will play.
Sir, even if I see a lot of the colleges are not focused on their alumni engagement. And if there is an engagement, there's engagement only with a particular set of alumni. Say, they're not covering the entire spectrum as such. So your advice on that, how can
So I
colleges?
think alumni are the biggest force multiplier. I used to say my students and later alumni, one thing that neither you or I can erase is the name of the university from your CV.
Yes.
So either they rate it or help build the brand. So if you help build the brand, then you're gonna be the most successful brand ambassadors and beneficiary of a bigger and better brand.
Yes.
So that's how alumni should be treated. I should be given place of value at UPS, and I'm happy that still I'm gone for 10 years, but still runs well. We have about 45 chapters across country, across world. And while I was in active role there, whenever I used to go to Dubai, so many of them will accumulate. We'll have dinner, chat. So idea is then, and then listen to them also, because as they grow senior, they become employers, they become managers, and then they can say that is the new generation coming out of the university is up to it,
Yes.
not up to it. What are the deficiencies that you may be blind to that have ignored? So alumni should not be just sought for asking money to build an hostel or something, but it will happen once
Yes.
your alumni has become multi-billion exits they get. It will happen automatically, but idea is to keep engaged, keep building brand, because there's no better force multiplier or brand building exercise than your alumni. If they're unhappy, if they're disenchanted, then no matter of social media marketing is going to enhance your brand. So that's my take on alumni connect.
So nicely explained, sir. And I also had very good experiences with the alumni of UPES. So
Very
while I
nice.
was in FMS Delhi, sir, like for 2 years MBA, I had couple of friends from UPS, and must say that the attitude, the way they basically, kind of carried themselves was very different from a lot of other people. And that goes on to show a lot about how they have the college has treated them throughout the graduation of that 4 years.
That also, and we had a very strong, what we used to call campus to corporate program. So what to find out, how, as you make transition, what are the first 30 days, first 60 days, first 90 days on the corporate side, what you should look out, watch out, what should you do, not do. So we had a very interesting program in those days. So that helped.
Sir, we all have seen the pandemic. I think people who are born after 2020, 21 won't have seen that, but we all have seen people who are.
Of us have seen it, yes. Large population of us, yeah.
Yes. And this pandemic drastically and dramatically accelerated digital adoption, but also exposed significant digital inequities as well. How should Indian universities strengthen infrastructure, cybersecurity, and data governance framework as they shift towards cloud first ecosystem?
So the pandemic was both a great stress test and a great revelation. It proved that digital infrastructure is not optional, but existential, which something which at UPS we always believe, but others also got to know or others got exposed. So my take is that as we move along now, we are at 2025 and they must adopt, cloud first, secured by design systems, architecture, data encryption, multi-factor authentication. Because data privacy and other are not that strong in India, but will become stronger as we go along. Privacy standards should not be negotiable by any means. And equally important, as you rightly said, is about digital. We are a vast country, different geography, different economic stratas. So it should not that if I'm in a remote village in Assam or I'm just above the poverty line, I should not get access to. So
Yes.
for that, one has to work towards devices which are subsidized. In fact, device costs have come down so phenomenally in last few years. And there are low bandwidth solutions, content which can be accessed. Then there's also offline, online synchronicity models which people follow. So all this should reduce inequity, but I don't say that inequity would ever go away. It hasn't gone away in developed countries like US and all. But from an institutional perspective, we should take all the measures that we have in hand to do so. And we also need very robust data governance policies, clear accountability, how learner data is stored, analyzed. And in fact, with the emergence of AI, ethical AI should be our guiding principle here.
And how do you foresee for these all, sir, these all AI driven academic planning tools, especially in curriculum mapping, outcome based education, and research assessment to make Indian higher education globally competitive?
Very good question, and I will just give an anecdote. I was telling a few of my colleagues here at Paradigm that in last 6 months we have hired 5 new employees, and their name are ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, Claude, Perplexity. So we do a lot of curriculum development, redesign, and we had a very mega project from one of our clients to polish their curriculum across various streams with AI and AI first kind of things. So in old days, that project would have taken us over a year or so and deploy so many resources. So with our own resources and these 5 friends of ours, we completed the project in 3 months. So which is phenomenal. And but so coming back to your question, they will become the silent co-pilot or co-planner of any academic team. Curriculum mapping engines. We have designed our own curriculum mapping engine, which, aligns by itself post outcomes with program outcomes and looks into even the prerequisite, post-requisite, co-requisite, etc., etc. So that will become a way of life, and the work of academic deans or dean academic affairs will become much easier. Also, in research, AI can map collaborations. It could also look into what is called citation clusters and also suggest emerging fields where universities can lead or find niche areas. So ultimately, the goal is not automation. It is about augmentation of one's power, freeing educators to work on innovation, research rather than paper. And these will help us if we adopt these measures. It will help Indian institutions to benchmark globally, grow faster, become world leaders in times to come. But technology has to be used with a purpose, as I said always,
Yes.
and with a outcome, with an impact.
And sir, how can universities ensure curriculum agility so that academic programs stay relevant to the fast evolving industries?
Yeah, I think that's a very good question. And in my mind, because I have many tasks, but my most favorite task is curriculum design and curriculum development, which I personally oversee now also, and in days of UPS too. So agility comes from modularity, the way you create what I call program superstructure. There are foundational courses which build foundational skills and let's say critical thinking, design thinking, analytics. Then there are flexible modules which change, which can with plug and play, just like your Lego blocks. When
Yes.
new technologies emerge, when new policy changes happen. So
Mm,
in UPS, we moved from fossil-based fuel engineering to renewable systems to climate finance to carbon credits, analytics. So the architecture stayed, but the content evolved. So
mm,
that's where second piece is embedding industry presence and not just from adjunct faculty. Now we have a provision of professors of practice, joint capstone projects, embedded. Now you have embedded micro credentials, skill credentials with the coming up of combining of higher education and skill credit frameworks. Reviews in UPS, 70% of our academic council was staffed by industry people who will come and give meaningful
mm,
rather than full of academics only. So that ensures relevance is built into system and not just checked afterwards because afterward it becomes too late if your kids are not employable because of want of
mm.
current and relevant skills.
Yeah, and there's a big employability gap which is which is already there. So like I've seen a lot of colleges where people do an MBA and they can't even operate a Google Sheet. So, and there's a lack of communication skills as well, sir. Like if you see a lot of engineering colleges, like if you leave the top 100, 200 colleges, the situation is very bad. Like below that.
True, but then there's no effort also, and there has been proliferation of both so-called seats
Yes.
and students because we are a young country, everybody needs to get admitted. Quality is variable and also people who are in charge of things don't look for we always believe student first philosophy and though there are many other private universities who also feel like
Mm,
that,
mm,
but in a lot of public system, even if you go to premier institutions like IITs or NITs, a lot of kids exceptionally bright, but don't have communication skills because they came from
yes.
disadvantaged backgrounds, naturally bright, but they came. So in UPS we thought that at least in BTech we have in MBA you have hardly 2 years horizon. In BTech you have a 4 year horizon. How semester by semester, semester by semester, you can add on various layers of so-called soft skills, which means presentation, dressing, etiquette, verbalizing, storytelling, and of course the tech skills, like you said, which are essential in terms of be able to run Excel sheets or be able to run simulation programs in engineering or CAD CAM programs or whatever is in your line. So that build up, but uh, very few institutions
Mm,
actually deliver that, especially as you said, once you fall down to tier two, tier three,
Yes.
the situation is horrible. I mean, there it's just pitiable. But
Yeah.
at the end, market forces always believe there is always an expansion of any industry.
Mm,
Education is also an industry, whatever whether we like to say it or not. Market forces will evolve. There is already closure of so many which came in the era of scarcity when demand
yes.
supply situation was skewed in engineering education. So many engineering colleges propped up
Yeah.
at least 40-50% are now gone.
Yes.
And there is also going to be mergers and acquisitions. People
Yes.
are acquiring universities, people are acquiring, merging universities.
Mm,
So slowly, only the fittest will survive. And fittest means who do have great employability outcomes for their graduates. But any industry takes its while to come to that stage.
yes. Sir, I find a very, there are too many common points between healthcare as an industry and education as an industry.
Both are recession proof.
Yes. That is one of the commonalities. Sir, you have mentored several startups through your EV Oracle. How can universities and industry collaborate more deeply?
That's great question. I personally feel universities and startups are natural allies. One has the depth, another has the speed. And we talk about a lot of incubation center, innovation center, centers of excellence, whatnot. But very few places in actuality I've seen, kids working with startup founders
Mm,
on a incubator situated on a campus
Yes.
and then learning. And there are so many things that can be done collaboratively. Recently, I visited one of the leading startups in India in quantum computing, who's not just got the grant from National Quantum Mission, but also venture funded. So when there is a confluence of research firms and venture funding, the output, so they built India's first own quantum computer, and now they're going to replicate it and make it accessible to academic institutions. So that's how. So if you have teams working on, let's say, a material science lab working with a EV startup, and there is battery chemistry, there are new materials to enhance battery life, enhance capability, capacity. So this is how both academics and startups and venture funds, research funds can come together to create great outcomes. But having said that, very few institutions are able to actualize that. But those who have blurred the line between learning and doing and making research translational and highly impactful. So that's what it is.
So, drawing from your engineering roots, what parallels do you observe between computer integrated manufacturing, 1980s, and today's AI integrated universities?
Very interesting. When I was thinking about this does have a very strong parallels. Actually, way back 20 years, 15 years back, computer integrated manufacturing revolutionized industry by connecting design, production, and quality control through real-time feedback. And similarly, universities are on similar path. With the AI integrated university, admission data informs pedagogy, pedagogy feeds employability, analytics, outcomes refine admission strategy. It's a whole continuous intelligent loop. And in the past, CIM improved manufacturing yield, and AI integration should enhance learning yield. And both rely on system thinking, connecting islands of information into one intelligent enterprise. So that's my take on parallel between AI integrated universities and CIM manufacturing in the past.
So, we'll also want to take your viewpoints on this National Education Policy 2020, which basically envisions autonomy, multidisciplinarity, and global linkages. From your experience, what governance reforms and digital first operating models are essentially to achieve this?
I think, no doubt, NEP 2020 is visionary. It had brought to fore many things, but success is variable as of now because unless and until we do a governance redesign, it would not happen. So we need to have digital first operating models. Every process is run admission, accreditation, whatever you have on integrated ERP, analytics. Data transparency always reduces friction, builds trust among universities and regulators because today, there's a lot of issues regarding what data we submit for various accrediting or regulatory bodies and what actually is. So autonomy should come with accountability, real-time dashboards, not static, and at the end, blockchain verified credentials across will improve trust across global mobility. And it's not just about efficiency, governance. I always say, I mean, you can have efficient system, but if you don't have empathy, you're not doing service to your staff. Or so challenge is to be high tech yet human centric, and sometimes that humane nature goes away in too much automation. The human touch, as we say, but that's the outcome.
So, one side question is that why UPS is only in Dehradun? Why not in other parts of India?
Very interesting question. Initially, UPS was a very domain specific university, and it's not that we didn't have a blueprint. We had a blueprint. In fact, we had passed in there were 6 different states, and then also 5 international campuses. Then our government has always came up with a rule that since we were incorporated as a state private university, you cannot cross state boundaries. So international campuses went away. Other campuses, then you have to incorporate a new university every time you go to a new state, and then they have jurisdiction, their laws. And then, of course, divestment happened. So new promoters, new owners had their own thinking.
And so, how do you view the evolution of the assessment systems?
I think it's a very interesting questions and assessments. Like I said in the past, there was just one what is called high stake exam, which is the end-term exam, and if you flunk, you gone. So we work with several. We're currently working with some interesting design universities and media universities where we have rethought the entire assessment platform, and we have given a huge weightage to formative assessments of various kinds, project works, action-based learning, actual creation of, because in both media and fashion, you can create artifacts and creative outcomes and jury-based. So the traditional pen and pencil format is very, very minimal. That too is there because our regulators still want some term to be there. And similarly, in engineering also, there is experimentation. You can submit hackathon project in lieu of or a code or even an engineering prototype in core engineering to get assessment. But it's more happening in private universities where there's a little bit more of autonomy in terms of and not so much in state public universities. But there are islands of excellence everywhere who are, So there is also a way that there should be a skill based, whether if I am a mechanical engineer, do I have a skill to run a CNC machine? Or I will go to shop floor and depend on my operator who's maybe only a high school graduate and who's just learned on the job and I won't know nothing and he would give me to ransom. That happens to a lot of us who go first time to shop floor without having, practical skill sets, which is something Indian core engineering education lacks. So that assessment, why just have a paper on CNC machines when the guy can only write that CNC machine have 4 axes, 5 axes, this does that, but can't operate the damn thing. So there is a challenge. So skill based should also be there. There just should be one exam. Create a piece of metal using CNC machine. That's it. That's great.
And finally, sir, if you were to advise the today's education leaders, what is that one technological or philosophical shift that they must embrace to make Indian higher education a global benchmark?
If I have to choose one, I would say embrace intelligence, and intelligence not just artificial but institutional as well. Institution has a lot of intelligence built into it as time grows, but it's they say institutional memory, and sometimes people don't access the institutional memory and have great data. The use of institutional memory, data, intelligence, and AI, etc., is used as a strategic, like I mentioned earlier, also co-pilots, not just dashboards. Let data drive decisions, but let values drive the direction of the decisions. Philosophically, we could move out of input output to outcome based impacts. And let's not just measure, sometimes somebody says, I'm a great university, I have so many students, great, fantastic infrastructure. What actual measurement is what is the real world value that your graduates are bringing. And if our institutions internalize that, we can truly become a powerhouse of higher education in times to come.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for this incredible conversation. We discussed right from cultural shifts to AI ecosystems, and it's inspiring to hear it from somebody like you who is both a practitioner as well as a visionary. Thank you for sharing your insights, sir.
Thank you, Rishikesh. And it's been a great joy to reflect on this journey. But the exciting part is that we are still at the beginning, at the end of this journey, and the future of education in India, I personally believe, is bright, it's fully connected, and full of purpose. We have so many young people. We have to really reap our demographic dividend. And for that, you still have to make it happen.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Extremely grateful that you took out time.
Thank you, Rishikesh.